Every seller has a story. I'm Georgia Mampanis, and welcome to our newest episode of the eBay Seller Spotlight podcast, where each month we spotlight sellers with a story to share with us. Our guest this episode has worked at some of the most world-renowned names in luxury and now pairs passionate collectors with their most sought-after luxury handbags through her own store, CovetThy. Welcome, Caroline Bui.
Thank you so much, Georgia. I'm thrilled to be here.
We are thrilled to have you here as well. Caroline, what do you sell?
Well, I sell secondhand luxury premium handbags. Anything that holds value, gains value, and is really considered a collectible object.
And when did you start this business?
I started this business about 10 years ago, but I have been selling on eBay for quite a while longer than that. It really came up because I was sort of transitioning from working retail for many years and decided to sort of change the trajectory of my career.
Okay, may I ask what you started selling on eBay before, you dove into this business?
We had a family account. The account's been up for about 24 years, and we were selling just little trinkets and purchasing odds and ends things, collectibles from childhood, pottery, things like that.
And did you piggyback off this account or did you start brand new?
We piggybacked off of this account to really kick it into high gear.
Okay, so what was your life like before you started your business full time?
I'm a formally trained artist. I studied at the Art Institute of Chicago in fashion design, graphic design, and photography. That's really how I started really learning the creative process. And I think it helped later on building a business and a career for myself.
And this career was?
This career has been a long career of working in retail, luxury fashion houses, and now selling these beautiful products online through eBay and through social media.
And why luxury brand merchandise?
Luxury in the last few years has obviously taken off. It's something that I've always been interested in, coming from fashion and really studying fashion. I moved to New York in high school for a program at Parsons and studied fashion design there. I was there with other designers like Mara Hoffman when she was still a student. She's now doing very, very well with her business. It really took me in a direction of really understanding and digging into the business from a very different perspective. I also interned with DKNY when I was in high school, or actually that was in college. And it really gave me the opportunity to not only sort of live in that environment, but to sort of dream and think about what was next.
You've been in that category for a very long time. Do you remember your first ever experience? Was there one particular bag where you're like, wow, I need it and I just want to start my whole life around it?
That's a good question. When I started at Hermes, I worked there for about, almost 13 years, I think. 12 or 13 years I worked in the store. And my first experience walking into the store was during my interview. And there was a beautiful Kelly bag that they were showing to a client. And it felt very intimidating at the time. It was a brand that I was very young, maybe 23 or 24 at the time. And experiencing that, it wasn't something that I was into. It was known as a brand for older folks at the time. I think kids my age were more into Gucci and Tom Ford and other brands like that. So it wasn't really something that interested me at the time. I think that I was probably into more of those younger developed brands.
And now you're like, wow, I wish I would have got on it earlier.
Exactly. It has changed quite a bit in recent years, yeah.
Do you see it changing significantly more?
It's changing in a lot of ways. Obviously, price points have gotten a lot higher, and there's this thriving secondhand market now because of the demand for those pieces. You can't always get them in the store. So it's really changing how people are buying from stores and considering really the secondhand market, which is thriving.
One of the jobs that you worked in was an editor for a fashion publication. So tell us about that job. Was it anything like Devil Wears Prada, for example?
So it was exactly Devil Wears Prada when I came to work at Condé Nast. I was there at Mademoiselle for a short period of time. Back then, the culture was a little bit more toxic. That has changed in recent years. When I landed that job, I was a bit naive. I was a Midwestern girl coming to New York City to really start my career in fashion. It was very intimidating, especially knowing that Anna Wintour was in the building and all the celebrities that we now know of through social media and television. It just happened by chance. I walked into the office. I had obviously been prepared with school and showed up with a portfolio, and it really helped me stand out in that application process. I really stood out because I had that creative background that sort of made me stand out amongst other applicants.
And what is it about owning your own business that you didn't get from working as an editor?
When I was an editor, it was kind of a short period of time, and I really missed working with the customers and the products. I had worked at Ralph Lauren as well a little bit before, Cesar Piccioti, a couple other luxury designers at that time. And I really missed having those conversations with customers about, their families and maybe their vacations and how they're looking for certain objects. And it was definitely what attracted me to getting sort of into that, going back into retail and getting out of the editorial world, which again was a very difficult position at that time.
Okay, so you just dropped a few more names. You just mentioned Ralph Lauren. What's your discount like? What does your closet look like?
Oh my gosh. So the discounts that I've had over the years have been pretty incredible. Ralph Lauren, they used to call us Polaroids because we looked like Polaroid pictures. We were perfectly picture perfect, like Ralph Lauren Polaroid. We were wardrobed and we looked and fit the part. And that was part of how I think I also landed the job at Condé Nast to start with, because I kind of looked the part, and I think they liked that at the time.
You started your own business, and then eventually, you trickled into eBay. So how did you start selling on eBay?
eBay came at a time when I was really transitioning out of retail. I think that retail was great for a really long period of time in my career, and then got to the point where I needed more flexibility. I had a growing family. I was a mom of two, and it was difficult to schedule, to be present, and I wanted to have more time with my kids.
You can make your own schedule. You can work your own hours.
Yeah, it was something very natural for me because I knew how to sell. I knew how to describe products. I knew how to photograph pieces because of my formalized photography training, and I knew where to get the equipment, things like that. So it was just very, very natural for me.
And you have the luxury of selling pieces you want to sell. It's not like going around selling a knife set,
Absolutely.
So you did talk a little bit about how owning your own business allowed you to manage being a full-time mom on top of that. Can you tell us more about that? Like, how do you manage that on a day-to-day now with your business?
It's always challenging depending on the age of the kids, and there's always going to be different challenges at different ages. But eBay has been a really easy place for me to sort of navigate that. If, I need to be at a teacher conference, I'm able to really prioritize that for a certain time period and then focus on eBay listings and maybe seller relations at another time in that day, as well as maybe shipping at a different hour than I normally would. So it's really easy to sort of plan your schedule, knowing sort of what's coming up and having that flexibility.
What advice would you give someone who is looking to be a luxury consignor but doesn't have the extensive background in it? Like, where do you suggest they start?
I think it's a great space to get started in at any time. And it's really about building trust as well as relationships. And that's something that you can start doing at any time in your life, even if you're straight out of high school or you're in college. Those are things that you make connections with. And then just having passion for something, whether it's a product, whether it's a technology, and just really learning as much as you can about that and jumping on eBay. You can do it.
So how do you go about authenticating your items? Do you take them to, Hermes, for example, and ask them, hey, can you authenticate this for me? Like, what does that look like for a seller who wants to learn how to authenticate their items?
Authentication is a whole new area that's really thriving. There's a lot of business opportunities in that category alone. I authenticate all of my pieces, and that really stems from my experience, not only learning from these companies, but also touching, smelling, all of the different senses that go along with working with these pieces that help you identify what is and what isn't, as well as social media. There's quite a bit now. I have to be very careful when I'm posting on Instagram that I'm not posting counterfeit pieces. It's important to also build that trust and keep that relationship with my clients, knowing that they can always trust me.
And tell me a little bit more about your Instagram. You have a crazy amount of following. Talk to me about that.
Instagram has been really a fun thing. It was very challenging. I started many, many years ago. It's been something that it can be very difficult at times. It can be very fun at times. I think that you catch a stride at some point, trying to figure out also the algorithms, and they're always changing. So there's no one particular method that works. It's just really keeping at it and really building relationships. Instagram has been a tool for me to really clientele and really start those conversations. And it's a great place for people to reach out and ask questions. They feel very comfortable. And it's been pretty successful, I think, based on the responses they get back from me, they really sense that they're talking to somebody who cares and they're talking to somebody who's an expert.
Yeah, who knows their stuff.
And it brings people to eBay all the time.
So is it hard to tell from the difference between real and counterfeit?
It's not as hard for me, but I think that it can be for somebody who really doesn't know. You certainly, as a seller, it's probably one of the most important things that you have to pay attention to when you're selling, because you cannot make those mistakes. Now that eBay has also a authentication process, it really makes buyers on eBay feel even more comfortable. And that's where, I come in and I just try to make sure my photos are the best, my descriptions are perfect. I'm typically over-describing and just really following that process until the customer receives the piece.
No such thing as over-describing.
Never.
Great. So where can we find your store online?
I am obviously on eBay at CovetThy, as well as CovetThy.com, and that's CovetThy. And you can find me on Instagram as the Birkin Fairy.
Birkin Fairy. Love it. Well, thank you so much for being here, Caroline.
Thank you, Georgia. I love it. Thank you so much.
Caroline Bui sells on eBay under the store name CovetThy. She's also been dubbed the Birkin Fairy, the name in which you can find on her Instagram. Shop her store and check out her Instagram page today. We hope you'll join us on our next episode where we'll shine the spotlight on another seller with an amazing story to share. I'm your host, Georgia Mampanis. Jim Griffith is our editor-in-chief. The eBay Seller Spotlight podcast is produced by Lipson and Podcast 411.